if you're the hiring person, hire the right person for the job. It's not going to matter what they look like, what color they are, what gender they are. It's not going to matter. But don't negate people just because they are of some other group. And that's what has transpired forever.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 6 of The Breakdown with Rothman Orthopaedics. I'm your host, Alex Hammond, and March is Women's History Month, and we're lucky enough to celebrate it again by doing another episode around the topic. So this time, I've invited 3 members of Rothman's leadership team, Betsy Duffy, Chelsey, Conway, and Nicole Coleman, to join us and describe their respective journeys to their current positions as vice presidents at Rothman. Also, we're going to talk about their work-life balance and their opinions on why there are less females in senior roles. Additionally, we polled the Rothman Orthopaedics employees for their input, and I've gathered the most common questions that were asked, and hopefully we'll get some insight on. So I'd like to welcome in 3 members of Rothman's executive team, Nicole Coleman, Vice President of Risk Management and Compliance, Chelsey Conway, Vice President of Finance, and Betsy Duffy, Vice President of Revenue Cycle. So first and foremost, I want to thank you all for joining me on this episode, and just really excited just to be speaking about the topic of the day. But before we get into the bigger conversation, I do want to introduce Helen Zoo, who is our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Program Manager here at Rothman, started back in October. And just to kind of guide the conversation and I guess set the tone, she wants just to go into a little bit and discuss about women in the workplace. And that again, will kind of just set our framework for our bigger discussion. So thanks for hopping on with us, Helen.
Thanks so much, Alex. It's with a lot of gratitude to be here with you all today, and just wanting to frame a little bit of how this came about, at least from my end. So in serving as the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Program Manager, having a chance to communicate DE&I to a broad range of audiences. And as I'm having conversations with individuals and groups, there's often a very frequent request and a desire to learn more about other experiences from various different perspectives and lived experiences, and hearing people saying that seeing images or screensavers makes them feel seen. So similarly, what better way is to then have more voices, and specifically, what does it look like for experiences of women in leadership roles? What does that look like, feel like, sound like? And I also want to preface by mentioning there's a common response from individuals in noting, well, why do we need to isolate the social identity? Why is it important to say women in leadership versus just leadership? And that depends on context, as many things depend on context. And what we're situating here today is also recognizing there's research and literature about representation in top levels of corporate spaces, where it looks like 20% of the C-suite are white women, 4% are women of color. And of course, there's variation among industry and also organization type. And often career advancement is portrayed in a metaphor for climbing a ladder. And through these conversations, we're also acknowledging that as individuals who are climbing ladders, in some instances that ladder is very wobbly with broken rungs. For every 100 men that are promoted to manager, there are 86 women. And sometimes it is climbing up that ladder and looking around and not seeing folks who look like us, or how microaggressions are experienced along the way. And also in paving the way for others. As we're climbing the ladders, oftentimes women are filling the gaps and mentoring others along the way. And of course, everyone has a unique experience in making the time and the space to uncover what that looks like for our guests today. So thanks so much, Alex.
Thanks, Helen. That was excellent. And of course that we are, recording this episode the day after Equal Pay Day. So it's not, that wasn't on purpose. It just happens to be that. So, obviously all this that we're talking about, it's kind of timely, but so I do appreciate, you hopping on and again, explaining that to us. And, you've done, your impact has been felt in the short amount of time that you've been here. So thanks again. But again, I just want to welcome in our 3 guests today. And, usually before we kind of, again, get into the bigger conversation, I think it's important for everyone just to kind of get a brief little history lesson on who you are and how you ended up at Rothman. So who would like to go first?
I'll go first.
Great.
So, hi everyone, my name is Nicole Coleman. I am the Vice President of Risk Compliance and the Chief DE&I Officer for Rothman. This year is 24 years for me at Rothman. I came from Temple to Rothman and came in a different capacity. I actually came to the organization in the beginning as the manager of our revenue cycle team. And I've lived like 9 lives over my time here at Rothman. So I've done several things. I've done everything from run our revenue cycle management team to run operations, to help with the expansion, to install our first EMR, to be the first compliance person that they had here at the Institute, to take on the risk management piece, to be the first person to take DE&I at this Institute. I've done a multitude of things since I've been here, and it's been quite a ride, man. I can't, it's really indescribable to watch an organization go from being so small to then become the size that we are now and to stretch into 4 states to take us across the Eastern Seaboard. So it's been very, very interesting for me here.
Yeah. And I think, it's great because I know obviously we'll learn a little bit more about Chelsey and Betsy, but because you have been here for such an extended period of time and catching your experiences and kind of hearing Chelsey and Betsy's experience, in the times that they've been there. So looking forward to, again, just to kind of seeing that. So Betsy, how about you go next?
Hi, I'm Betsy Duffy. I am the Vice President of Revenue Cycle Management, and next week, I'm celebrating my 1-year anniversary with Rothman.
Hey. Congrats.
Thank you. It was a busy year for sure. Lots going on in Revenue Cycle, lots of staffing transition, leadership transition, and workflow transition, very honestly. I came from a pediatric nonprofit group. I was there for almost 18 years. So very different mindset to get used to. And very honestly, physician billing is physician billing. So my experience over the last 18 years is very much in line with the work we're doing here. And I'm excited to be part of the team. The growth and the goals here are what drew me to the position. The leadership team is wonderful, and just getting to work with Chelsey and Nicole, Helen, and others has been a real rewarding experience in the last year. So thank you for including me today.
Great. And thank you for sharing that. Chelsey, last but definitely not least.
Yeah, so I actually have been here. January was my official year, so very new, wow. Just like Betsy. Very similar in terms of a lot of transition, a lot of changes since I've been here, changes in leadership, team members, workloads. I oversee all of accounting, finance, facilities, and purchasing. So a lot of growth opportunity, especially as we expand outwards and what we want that to look like from a centralization standpoint. My background is very diverse in that I haven't been entirely in healthcare. I started out in public accounting, then I bounced to industries related to publishing, manufacturing, all centered around health and wellness. I came here because I previously worked briefly with the CFO, and he saw potential in me trying to help get us to where we need to as we're expanding and kind of grow outwards. So excited to be here.
And we're excited to have you. Happy anniversary. Happy 14 months, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of just want to, get right into it. And some of these questions, again, we did poll the Rothman employees, and we kind of collected some of the, again, similar to what Helen was saying, some of the ones like the most frequently asked questions. So there was definitely some themes that we were noticing. So I'll let you know specifically if it's my question, or I'll just kind of call out if it is a one from an employee. But first, I want to start off with, why is diversity important in leadership roles?
That's such a big question. And depending on who's asking it, what I would say, and I've always said this, is that representation matters. So you want anyone to be able to look at the team that's running an organization and say to themselves, I can do that, and I would belong in that group. You want people to feel that way, and you want them to be able to think of themselves and envision themselves in future roles. And that's where the representation comes from. Historically, and Helen quoted some of the statistics in terms of women in leadership roles. Historically, women have not been in these types of roles. So it's very, very important for younger women to see this so that they feel empowered and that they know that they have someone that they can either lean on or look up to help them get there if that's where they desire to go.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, with diversity, we all have our own personal experiences, socially, professionally, coming from different backgrounds. And I think with that, you get different perspective. When you have similar backgrounds, personalities in one workforce, you're not getting new, innovative ideas. You're not seeing it from other people's standpoints. Whereas if you have that diverse background, you are getting that. You're putting people in that position where they weren't forced to think of something outside of the box because they never experienced it themselves. So it's very important to have individuals, employees, leaders across the board from different backgrounds and different diverse groups to get that type of feedback.
I think it creates connections. I think to Nicole's point, if they feel connected to their leaders and the fact that they have the opportunity to take a similar path, they're more willing to be engaged and look for successful outcomes if they see themselves in a role like that in the future.
Yeah, I think all very valid points. And this was actually a question that is asked from an employee, but why do you think there are less females in senior roles? So is it one of those things where do we think that women are not up for the challenge, or are they overlooked? Or is it a combo of both? But what are your thoughts?
So go ahead, Chelsey, because I was going to say, we're women, we are rising.
I know, I was like, I'm not speaking to you, Lori, about
Yeah, I know, I'm just making a joke, like we can do everything. We do everything.
Yeah, I don't think it's a matter of, we definitely can. In my opinion, I think it's a matter of there's still a perception we are trying to break through. I think we have made strides over the years and over the decades of getting into the workforce, but there's definitely still a perception of women not being able to do something or approaching something in a certain way. And then especially when you consider family, like, oh, there's a perception that females can't balance that. So I think there's still a long way to go to break that perception. And I think really what it comes down to is how your upbringing, the groups you're around, whether you're around people who are more forward thinking and open to that. I think that's really what's going to change that, right? That's why we're seeing changes in the workforce, because you have new generations that were brought up in a different way where we are taught to think, and we're teaching our children to think that, yes, you can do it, you can balance it. It's just not going to be the way it was. So I think we're still working through a lot of that perception in society in general of can we rise up to that challenge, and really working to prove that. Eventually, I hope that we break that barrier altogether, but I think it's, we're still working towards that.
Do you feel it's better since you've been in this line of work? Do you feel like it's there, you've seen improvement?
I would say I've seen improvement, but it's not where it can be or should be. And I think it definitely depends on the industry you're working in, and definitely department wise. Some departments, when you look at a corporation, are still very male dominated. And so, certain areas, they might have more female presence than others. So I really think it depends on the corporation you're working for, department you're working for. I wouldn't say it's even across the board, because some positions do require more demand than others. And with that demand, that's when you really start to question, can a female handle it with everything else that they're dealing with? Intense situations, there's a perception that maybe females react a certain way, can't handle Not saying that's fair, but I think it's still something. Yeah, yes. I think it's still something we have to prove and kind of cross the line with. Mm-hmm. I've seen improvement, but not where it could be.
I just had this conversation with someone the other day. It's just the perception, like you said, of we're never allowed to show emotion in the workplace. Like that's just doesn't matter what it is, whether it's crying, anger, whatever. Like we're always supposed to keep it together. And I want to get, Betsy and Nicole, your thoughts on it, but It's kind of like one of those things where you always feel like you have to be on your game. Like you're not allowed to have an off day.
Our emotions aren't normalized in the workplace. Mm-hmm. They're talked about as something very different than what they really are.
Yeah.
Not only that, I would argue that family also is not necessarily valued in terms of the flexibility. Any person, it doesn't matter if they're male or female, any person would need to take care of their family. And so those are concepts that have not come as far as they've needed to come over the years, to Chelsey's point. And so, one of the things that I really, really love is that there are two women on this call who are on a financial end. Like if you look at the finance industry as a whole, there are very, very few women. And the higher up you go, the less you see. So, that speaks to a lot of different challenges that I think we as a culture and a country have not worked to really, change over time and to actually move into a direction where those things are looked at as normal. It's normal to have a family. That's normal to have a family. Normal.
Absolutely.
It's normal to get upset. That's normal. It's normally be emotional. Whether or not you can control those emotions or feel like you're in a place where you have to control them or you have to code switch or whatever you need to do to make yourself fit into a dynamic that is a little bit unrealistic in this day and age is another story. But those are the types of things that, as a whole, not just at Rothman, just as society as a whole, those are challenges that we've yet to really, really tackle, And it's true, those stereotypes, those old stereotypes still exist. You get judged before you even do anything. So
for sure,
the first thing they see is the exterior. And so you have to overcome that and kind of get yourself into a space where people really look at you for you and then will not, overreact to maybe your reaction or way of thought along the lines of some topic that you're having a discussion on.
I think you have to be your own advocate. I have experienced pushback, if you will, from both men and women in that space, child rearing and emotional exchanges. I think you have to advocate for yourself. You have to show your skills and what you bring to the table, and you can't waver from that in order to be seen and taken seriously. Over 17 years ago, I started my family, and I was one of the first work from home employees at the hospital I was working from. I advocated for, a split hybrid model. I was very pre-COVID, before COVID hit.
Way before that.
But I knew I wanted to work full time, have my family. I wanted it all. So I made a proposal. I negotiated the contract. And I did get pushback from women on the team as well, because they either didn't think they themselves could balance that and kind of saw, challenges with that model. But after I was able to kind of show how it could work if you're dedicated to it and you believe in your skill sets, it does benefit, but you have to advocate for yourself and believe in yourself.
I actually have a question just because it's a little bit more on a personal level, but do you find, because I'm hearing you, Betsy, talk about how you've got pushback from other women. Do you sometimes find there is that level of competition among other women? In my experience, I feel like I haven't had full support from my leaders or my bosses that were women, but for some reason with men, I feel like there's a little bit more of a support there. But is it, and my perception is from their side, there's just not enough room for the both of us. So I don't feel like I would always get that support, but I'm just curious to know if you ladies, have felt that, or, whose responsibility is it to push women forward? Other women or other men? It's a question, but, sometimes unfair, but thoughts.
I wholeheartedly echo it. I do think it's because there are limited opportunities for women. So very much is a competition. It's viewed as a competition. No one wants to have other folks kind of progress past them. And I have had the same experience with female leadership where I didn't feel supported. I felt much more of a competition, and it was not a good fit. There was no mentoring there. There was no guidance. There was no professional development and career path opportunities because of the challenges there.
Yeah.
But I do think it's everyone's responsibility. I think women should lift each other up and create those opportunities, see things in our teammates that we don't see in ourselves and complement our teams that way, rather than see people as a competition or an external force, that we don't necessarily want to engage with.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I would also say that from my perspective, because I've felt resistance on my own end with, either peers or, anybody that I reported into that may have had some pushback or not really promoted me, it does motivate me to promote my female leads. I've always had a very diverse team in any company I've been in, but it's always important to ensure that I'm giving that guidance. I made sure to make myself available to mentor people, to say, this is what you need to do. This is what you should focus on, because I know what it feels like to not have that support from another female leader and really have that feedback in terms of how can we make this better? How can we break that barrier? And that's where it's just really, you wish that you had more of that common ground with someone, because to break that perception, that stereotype. You should be banding together. But again, when you're seen as one of many, and in an environment where they only allow so many females for whatever reason, you can't help but feel like I have to be the one that they see. I have to be the one where they see that I'm just like everyone else. And it's hard to combat that. But I think it is on us to make sure that we learn from it and promote downwards to say, okay, I'm going to be the one to promote my team up and give them that guidance that I'm missing or I haven't received from, my fellow peers.
Love that.
Yeah, I look at that so differently. Like, I feel like if you have the capacity to really help somebody make it to the next level, it is your responsibility. I take that very seriously. And there have been multiple times that I've had people who come across my path, whether it be physically at this organization or other organizations where I've either sat on boards or mentored, where I'm saying, I recognize exactly where you're trying to go, and I'm going to tell you exactly how to get there. These are the 5 things I want you to leave, walk away and do. And I want you to come back and tell me after you get them done so I can see whether or not you need more support or whether or not you're good to move on. I have not really had too many relationships where I reported to other women where I was also trying to move up for at least the last 20 some odd years I've been reporting to.
I was going to say.
I've been reporting to a male, but in other facets of my life where I do other types of work or sat on other types of committees or boards or been a part of other types of organizations. This is big for me. This is really, mentoring is a big thing for me. And I feel like if you don't personally take some onus yourself to figure out how you can be a part of the solution, you're just perpetuating the problem. So you have to make a concerted effort to help those around you who need the help to get to where they need to be. And I am a huge proponent of, I don't ever want to be the smartest person in the room. How about all of these people who are smarter than me? I want you to get some position, go higher than me. I'm going to help you. I am going to help you get there. But that's really what it really should be about. That mindset of, I might not get that one spot that's there. I look at that as I wasn't meant to have it. For whatever reason, maybe that's not a good fit for me. Maybe I wasn't going to do well. Maybe the culture wasn't going to be the right thing for me. And maybe this person over here, it really is a good fit for them. So I've always looked at it as, if I don't obtain something for whatever the reasons, maybe it's just not in my cards to have it. Or maybe I need to go a different route to get it in a different space. Maybe this space is not the right space. So, I've done a lot of work with different people over the years, women, students, different people, to help them realize potential and how to get there. And that's something that I'll probably continue to do for a very long time.
Yeah. And I look at it as, when I say competition, it's like, it's only a one-sided competition because I'm not in it. So I don't feel like there needs to be a competition. I'm not trying to compete against you. I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to work hard because I want to work hard, not because I think I'm better than you. But I also believe in, especially if we're working together, like, we're a team. So if there's something I can do to share my knowledge with you, or something that I've been through that I can, shed light on, I'm happy to help, and I know, especially, coming from my background, working in PR, working with interns, and they're like, I haven't had a clue. I don't know where to get started. And I'm like, this is what you need. Like, same thing, Nicole, like, this is what you need to do. This is the lessons you need to learn. Do this internship, do this, and it's not cut and dry. It's like, because I knew, like, it was hard when I was there, and I was like, if I can provide, it was not easy. They want, you're like, why don't you have 15 years out of experience when you're out of college? Don't know. But, so it's like any of that stuff, if I can shed that light and, give a little bit of info, if they have one takeaway from me, then great, just something. Because the same thing, it's like, I've been there, done that. And if someone makes it easier for them, and who knows, maybe I'll need a job down the line from them. So that stuff comes full circle.
I think it's interesting. I had a conversation recently with a former colleague outside of Rothman who, as we're talking about, competition and whatnot, it appears that males are starting to feel that they're being, quote unquote, punished for being a male and or a white male in the working world right now. So they are very fearful to overstep or find their place, because of the diversity and inclusion efforts that are currently underway, right? So I think as we start talking about this, yes, we want to promote women, we want to support each other, but I don't want to lose sight that our teams are made up of men and women, and we need to be inclusive and find ways to work with each other and just build individual skill sets. It's, I would much rather look at someone that is a great fit for a job than check a box and say, because you are this or that, you get the job. We need to just be inclusive of each other's skill sets, experiences, backgrounds, and what you can bring to the role or the team that you're being brought in to lead.
Yeah, I mean, I like that comment, Betsy, because I would agree with that. While we still need to promote that diversity, and I think there's still a long way to go, I agree. You don't want to go too far into the point where we're going in reverse, where now it's heavily female on one side versus male. I think really what it comes down to is you need to promote that diversity so that there is a balance, and that we're really looking at how is the team overall, how is the company overall, do we bring balance from different perspective, whether it be from, race, gender, anything like that. Just we need to be able to have a good balance to consider that and it not be one-sided. And, I've heard very similar conversations about how, the male workforce now feels like they have that competition, which I think is healthy, but you don't want it to go to the point where it sends them in the other direction. And like, we're kind of going that seesaw act. You have to have it right in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. I've heard that as well. And what I would say to that is that when you're in a position to employ anyone, you always have to pick the right person for the job. What they look like should not matter. You need to pick the right person for the job. To the feelings of someone who now feels pressure because it is recognized that there is inequality in terms of, obtaining certain types of positions or even being considered, I have a different feeling for that as well. I mean, you need to feel uncomfortable. You know why? Because it's been unbalanced forever. It's been unbalanced forever. And when things start to balance themselves out, it's uncomfortable. If you're the hiring person, hire the right person for the job. It's not going to matter what they look like, what color they are, what gender they are. It's not going to matter. But don't negate people just because they are of some other group. And that's what has transpired forever. That has gone on forever. It still happens today. I still see instances where interviews happen and there's literally the only people that come in for the interviews are white men. That's all that ever comes in the door. And, I'm a member of Chief and I'm like, why can't you find anybody? This is not even a diverse candidate pool. This is not even diverse. So I don't subscribe to I'm going to worry about you. You should be a little uncomfortable at this point because you know what? I think for forever, and it's not can't even say for decades, I can say forever, it has not been balanced. And a lot of people have been not even provided an opportunity to throw their hat in the ring to say, hey, I have that same skill set. Would you consider me for the role? So that uncomfortability should be felt.
Yeah, and I think even just along those lines, when you say, Nicole, it's, when you have candidates that are essentially, if you're looking at the same resume, mm-hmm. and then you bring them in and then it's literally same interview, they both perform the same in person. And then it's kind of like the default group that you kind of go to. And that's typically what happens. So yeah. I kind of go along those lines just because, again, just being, a Black woman, it tends to affect me a little bit more, especially I'm not on any of your level yet. But, so it's something that I feel or I have felt where it's like, I literally could look at a job and I'm like, I know I can do this. And then, unfortunately, depending on, who's doing the interview and who came in. So it's kind of where I'm like, I'm okay with the uncomfortable.
I'm very okay with it.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, you're still not going to get the job.
Right. And then.
So, I mean, it is what it is.
And especially too, again, if you look at it, the whole, like you said, of course, hire the best person for the job.
Yes.
I think we all completely agree with that. But I just think it's just a product of everything that we're kind of doing right now. And this, there is a shift. And then, like you said, it doesn't have to go to we're here to one extreme to the other. And again, making it balanced, of course, that ultimate goal, that would be great. But I think just because there is a little bit of shakeup, people are just like, wait a minute, this isn't what we're used. And that's the thing. I think it's not what we're all used to. Like, it is different. I'm sitting here talking to the three women, like you said, two of them in a finance revenue cycle background. That, like, seeing that and knowing that we had that at Rothman, that was shocking to me. And it was great, great. And it was a great thing to see. And I'm glad that we are here. So I'm a troublemaker anyway. So I'm all about rocking the boat. But you all mentioned a little bit about the work-life balance, and we all know that typically will fall on the women. So again, this was another employee question, but how do you, and I always think it's just kind of an unfair question, because why do we always have to point this on the women to figure out? But how are you balancing home life, being a parent, being a partner, and staying on top of what you were doing every day? And, and people are reporting to you. I don't know how many people, but how are you balancing it all? Like, what are you doing? And can you, like you said, Betsy, can you have it all? You wanted to have it all. Is it possible?
So I'm a single parent. I have my son a majority of the time, and I do a majority of the lifting by myself. It's just he and I will say that when it comes to entering any type of new position, any company I go into, the first thing I make very clear is that I am a single parent, which means that if my son needs me, if there's an event going on, I will be there. I think really what it comes down to is a change in what corporate life looks like, working remote now. My schedule is not a traditional 9 to 5, 8 to 5. I work around what works best for me. And I think that's really where we need to start shifting. And when we talk about, corporations, jobs, we really need to be adaptable to ensure that everyone, and again, I agree, it shouldn't always fall on the female to have the assumption that we take care of everything, but we do. So being able to, set out my day to know that, these days I have to leave at this time. I'll give myself some time. I dedicate it to my son. We have dinner, we go to basketball, we do whatever we need to. And then, I'll jump on when he goes to bed to make up for some work. For me, that works. For me, I'm able to keep that. And that's how I have my balance. If I had to be under that strict 9 to 5, it would be more of a struggle for me to try to navigate through, getting him to daycare and babysitting and schoolwork. And, with me, I approach my son with, this is how our life is going to be, where you need to take lead on helping me. Now, again, he's very young. I talk to him in a different way, but I think that's how we now manage work-life balance, where, even if you have two parents at home raising a child, it's no longer your traditional, okay, we drop the kid off, mom stays home or dad stays home. We have to be adaptable and have a flexible work schedule to accommodate not only our children, our personal lives. When I don't have my son, I still try to work a flexible schedule where I can meet my friends for dinner or go to a gym or, take some kind of class, whatever it may be. And I think that's really where that balance comes in, is just being able to have a flexible work schedule. Now, again, unfortunately, in certain positions, you don't really have that flexibility, but where you can, you should take advantage of it, because it adds to that work-life balance. And if you are in a good place, if you are mentally in a good place with having that balance, to me, that adds to your success.
Great answer.
I raised my daughter as a single parent as well. She's 25 now, but I started here when she was 2 or 3 years old. And so I was married at the time, but then wound up separated and ultimately getting divorced. It was very difficult at times because my schedule wasn't so flexible. And so to Chelsey's point, I think these are the things that we recognize that where we can actually really be valuable to someone else. If I had someone who was a single parent working for me now and they needed to have a little bit more of a flexible schedule, that would be something I would graciously offer, because just giving that little bit of flexibility to allow someone to bend just a little bit makes all the world of difference to someone who already has some challenges in front of them when they're taking the lift of raising a kid by themselves. Right. So that was difficult for me for quite some time until, of course, she got older and she was able to do a lot of things by herself, and then ultimately went off to college and then graduate school and then moved out. So that is definitely something I remember a lot of those times. I spent so much time working and trying to maneuver things to not be missing from different things that she was performing in, or shows that she did, or just any of those things. And it was a really, really, really big struggle. And again, this goes to, this is where we need to normalize having a family. If you can, there should be some flexibility. And I think that one of the things that COVID has taught us is that there is room for that. There's a lot of room for that. We don't have to go to an extreme, but we certainly can recognize that there are resources that can be used to keep people connected when they're not physically here. And if they're a good employee, you allow them that flexibility to figure out their timing to get things accomplished, tasks completed, and goals reached. If they do it and they meet all of those goals, what does it matter if they do it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 6 p.m.? It's not, as long as they turn in a good product. So I'm glad that Chelsey can say that, because I wasn't always able to say that.
Yeah, and I mean, even for me, like, even talking maybe 5 years ago, like, I was in a similar position where I didn't have that flexibility. Yeah. And, COVID is definitely, that's the one time we can say COVID was a good thing, right? Because it did force us to think outside the box. But being in my position as a leader, and to Betsy's point, what she did when, she had her children, being that advocate that, okay, when it comes to certain roles, we do not have to be a 9 to 5. We do not have to have this, old fashioned structure. If you are more flexible, basically putting that trust in them and showing, I trust you to get your work done. So go be with your family, go do what you need to do so that you are happier. And for me personally, I think it's really helped everyone's mindset. And again, I fully recognize that every job does not have that, but where you can, as a leader, that's where you should really try to enforce that and really try to promote that and let people see that you're trying to do that, so that they understand that you're on their side, you have their back, you do care about their well-being. Even if it can't happen, I think if you vocalize it and your team sees that, it just contributes to that, wow, I feel like I'm being taken care of, even though it can't happen. So.
Yeah. And I mean, sorry, Betsy, I'll let you go, but no, just like you said, by saying that, it's just like, it's the optics that you do care. And I think people tend to be more engaged. Like, if I know, my supervisor is letting me dip off for 30 minutes, like you said, I don't have any children, so I can't really speak to this, but to do something, to go to a doctor's appointment, to tend to my health and make sure that I'm good. And great, if I can answer an email and I know that it's not going to be held over my head and they truly appreciate the work, and I'm going to always want to have their back just the same way that they're going to have my back. So it is really just kind of, a full circle kind of moment where, just allowing them and people just feeling less stress, not feeling like, oh, if I ask my supervisor, like, am I going to get in trouble? Like, I need to go see my kids, play. And I think people, like you said, prior to COVID, were nervous for that, or for asking for that freedom and for that flexibility. So like you said, if there was a positive outcome from COVID, I think a lot of people really realized, like, kind of reprioritized some things and knew what was important to them, and still kind of holding on to that. And I think, again, not only on we talk about the Great Resignation, but men and women are kind of quitting alike, and like, my family's important, I'm quitting. And it's like, like, I saw someone told me that the other day, and I was like, more power to you. Like, good. Like, if you can do it, have at it.
I think you need to meet people where they are. I have folks that really want to be on site every day. That's how they get their energy. That's how they work best. And then I have folks that never come in the office, and that works for them. And I watch productivity. We're definitely, Revenue Cycle is a productivity shop. We have, goals to meet and things to do each day. And the folks that you allow the space to work in the environment that works best for them succeed the most. They are the most productive. They are the most engaged. They're not calling out. They don't, miss meetings or deadlines. I really just think we have to be very individualized versus groupthink at this point, and just meet people where they are and give them the grace and the benefit that you trust them to do a good job, and, let their results speak for themselves.
I love that you said the environment. I looked at people in their environment. You didn't call out one thing over the other, and that was awesome. I want to be mindful of all of our time, but kind of end on somewhat of this whole conversation was positive and it was awesome, but who has inspired you? And it could be personally or professionally. I hope you all knew, like, a question like this was going to come up. So yeah, who has personally or professionally inspired you?
My daughter.
Oh,
I did so much of this stuff for my daughter. I did not want my daughter to not have a good role model. I really didn't. I really did. You have to, again, representation matters. So if the image that she saw was not of someone who was able to, one, take care of themselves, educate themselves, show a work ethic, what that looked like, how to be a responsible adult. You know, those are how to be a good family member, a good sister, a good mom. Like if she didn't see that, or if I personally think if I would have failed at that, I don't think that I would have anything. I just wouldn't have it. I would. She was my driver. She was my driver for a lot of things. She was my driver for DE&I. She reverse psychology me one night and said, Mom, if you don't do it, who will? And I was like, shut up, Amira, I taught you too much. So I can say, not so much the role, she was my motivation, not a role model, but that was my motivation, 100%.
Love that.
Not really speaking of role model, but more, you know, to Nicole's point, motivation. I had a very unusual upbringing. I'm the first to go to college. I'm one of the few in a corporate setting. I want to say my motivation was more my own doing, where I wanted to prove something. I wanted to prove that the stereotype of what I was born into and what I grew up with, that I wasn't a statistic of some sort. And so, you know, even when I talk to my son, who realizes now as he's older that I didn't have a traditional upbringing, but wow, my mommy's like really successful and she's doing a lot of stuff that no other mom does. Like, to me, that is my motivation. And, you know, I am a mentor to, you know, people in my community where, you know, they may have had some rough upbringings. And so being able to talk to them, to show them, like, you don't have to be part of that cycle. You can break that cycle. It's hard work, but you can get there. I didn't have the opportunities that most people had. I worked my entire way up, and it wasn't, you know, a family or a friend. It was my own courage to say, I can stand out and do this. I am not going to be what I, you know, was born into. I'm not going to be what my society thinks I should be. I'm going to prove it otherwise and really work for that. And just being the voice of, you know, younger generations and speaking with them and them really looking at you like, oh, wow, like you understand and look at how great you're doing. And it wasn't easy. Like, to me, that's the motivation, and what really drives me is just knowing that I can do it and having those barriers up. I'm all about breaking that barrier where I can. So I think today it's hard to have that one person. It can just be a scenario that motivates you and not a specific person. So I come at it from that perspective.
A great one.
I would
Betsy,
agree.
how about you?
I think motivation is a big factor. And to your points, my children definitely are my motivating factor. And really what led me here, I guess, overall, is I have a sibling who was born with a chronic condition. You know, I watched her in and out of hospitals and saw what was broken and what I didn't want anyone else's family to have to go through. And I've just dedicated my whole career to making sure the healthcare system works for everyone. Mm-hmm. And I've made sure that I've taken positions that allow me to be a decision maker and an influencer, to correct broken processes, make things compliant, you know, and just really have a say in what the healthcare world looks for all of us. So yeah, it's a multifactorial thought process, I think, that leads you down your path and how you get there and stay motivated.
Great. Okay, I lied. I actually have one more question. I'm sorry. What would you say to the Rothman employees, specifically, let's talk to female Rothman employees, about leadership roles, and just what would be your advice for them, or something that they can work towards? You know, again, you know, the three of you are all from different perspectives. Chelsey and Betsy, you've been here 1 year, Nicole, obviously 25. So we're all obviously different sides of the spectrum here, but what would you want their takeaway to be, I guess, from this conversation?
You know what? I think Chelsey and I have very similar backgrounds, as I just realized. So I was also like the first to go to college and graduate, get a master's degree and graduate, get a job in a corporate setting and start to climb the ladder. And so I always go back to education as a big thing. It's really, I think the more you open up your mind and read about different things and your blinders come off, the more of a good citizen and humane person you will be, no matter what industry you work in. And so for the women here who are looking for that, what can I do to get to that next step? The first thing I always ask is, what type of educational background do you have, and are you happy with it? Because if you're not, I start talking about opportunities to change that background. Like, here are some programs that I know that you might want to take a look at, or here's some schools that, you know, you can take a look at whether or not the tuition might satisfy something, or they have flexibility if you're working or have children. Here's some things to consider to get you to where you need to be. And then I speak very honestly and from my heart about struggles, different things that I've had to deal with and how to overcome, or at least how I felt like I've overcame those struggles to help me continue to move forward. And then I just open myself up as a resource. If the person wants to sit down and chat or talk, I'm going to be open to listening. I'm always going to be open to listening. And if they want to consider my opinion on things, if they value my opinion at all, or if they just want me to talk to them about what I've experienced, I think that those little things they just help so immensely in terms of being able to help someone else realize potential and how they can get there.
Yeah, and I think one of the key thing is, and especially when I mentor individuals, I think it's very important to, you know, talk to individuals and make sure that they understand what they want. You know, I know that when I started my professional career, I went in firm saying, this is what I want. And that has changed so many times over. And so I think it's, you know, being specific with them and talking with them. Well, what do you want out of your life? Do you really want to devote? I mean, it's going to require work. It's going to require dedication. Do you want to put that to work, or do you want to put that to something else? And being transparent with getting whoever you're speaking to understand what they truly want from themselves, and not feeling like they have to follow a certain path. And then in addition to that, I think it's important to have some mentor. It doesn't have to be a formal mentor, but have someone who is above you. And that doesn't have to be a female. It can be anyone that you feel comfortable with in terms of showing what you want and showing your skill. And then having that, sometimes that individual can help open doors for you because they know you on a different level where, hey, maybe your resume may not read a certain way, but they know your dedication. They know what type of worker you are. I tend to not focus on, you know, I've hired people in my departments who may not have a specific accounting background or a finance background, but if I can see their ambition, their drive, I'm willing to take a chance on them. And I know that has gone a long way. So being able just to form those relationships so that when that opportunity comes where, you know, you wouldn't even think of it, you wouldn't think like, I can't fill this role. Like, I don't have the requirements for it. Okay, well, I'm your mentor and I know what you can do and I know you can fill this position. That goes a long way. And I know that for people who have worked with me, they have expressed so much appreciation for taking that chance on them because I know them as an individual, because they've come to me and asked me questions on how can I better myself? What should I focus on? And it's not a formal mentoring. It's more of just a professional friendship where I can give them that guidance to eventually get them and lead them in the right direction.
Couldn't agree more. I had a mentor who is still a very valuable mentor and friend who brought me along into leadership roles. And I think the message for our Rothman community here is when you're given an opportunity, take it. Don't constantly seek approval for the work you're being tasked with. My mentor, you know, after many times of me going in and saying, you know, can I do this? Is this okay? Is it the right direction? Is it what you're thinking? He finally looked at me one day and said, I put you in the role because I knew you could do the job. Go do it.
I think that's great.
No, you're right.
A million times after, and I use it within my own teams. You have to, you know, create the bandwidth, create the trust, and have trust in yourself. You're put there because they know you can do it.
That autonomy, really, there's so much power in that, and just saying, I trust you, you can figure it out. And if they're struggling, yes, you're there, but showing them, like, I don't need to hold your hand. Like, you know this, you got this, run with it. And especially when they have that first win, no matter how big or small, and like, just congratulating them and acknowledging, like, I didn't take any part in this. Like, this was all you. And like, acknowledging, like, I'm not taking credit for what you did. Like, this was 100% you is so encouraging to them. And so I agree with Betsy, like, seize any opportunity you can. And even if you see an opportunity that wasn't given to you, if you see one, just go after it. You know, what's the harm? As long as it doesn't impact, if it doesn't impact your day to day, just go after it. And then who knows, you could uncover a process that we didn't think of that really changes the way we view things. So go at it. Like, you know, more power to you.
I actually, quick story, one of my mentors to this day, I was a junior in college. One of my favorite people. Actually, it's like one of those things, like she was my boss at the time. Now she just gets invited to like all the family parties. Like that's how we're talking about like 16, 15, 16 years. And, her daughter, now it's at the stage, it's like we've known each other so long. I just saw her daughter turn 21 the other day. So it's like, I'm not ready to accept that. But the funny thing is she was that person for me and throughout my career where anytime, we see each other a few times a year. Again, we're past just boss, mentor, like that relationship, but we are truly part of each other's lives. And she has 2 daughters and in similar fields to her where it's feel like now I'm mentoring them and they're asking me questions and they're connecting with me on LinkedIn. And I was just like, it's great just because I feel like she did so much for me in my career and always helped me. And anytime I needed something was just always there. And I feel like I can do the same for her daughters, and help them out and help them along the way. So like I said, the whole mentor relationship and mentee is, it's something I'm super passionate about and I feel super strongly about. But anything else I want to give you all the floor if you have any last tidbits or anything before we kind of wrap up here, but anything else? I mean, it's fantastic. Honestly, we could probably stay on another hour, but it was such a great, insightful conversation, timely, it always is. And, it's great to obviously see 3 women in vice president roles at Rothman, and again, different paths. You guys didn't all have the same paths to get to where you were and, you worked hard and, coming in and then Nicole, you've been there. So see you kind of move up the chain. I think it's something that hopefully when people listen that they can, I know I'm listening and I'm taking notes and I'm not exactly where you all are yet, but it's great to know that we do have 3 women in these roles and kind of leading, Rothman Orthopaedics. So just want to.
I think just in parting, I think what we're doing today is amazing. I think having something like this, a forum where, your leadership can really have that visibility. I think too often, and this is not from a female leadership perspective, but usually when you talk about your executive leaders at the top, they're not really visible. But I think having more of that presence, especially if we try to do more where we just have that presence, where we're having this informal conversation where we break that barrier of formality to make people feel more engaged. I would love to take part in that if we do anything like this in the future.
Noted.
Especially if we do mentoring programs, not everyone is going to be an executive leader. Not everyone will be a manager, but I feel like personally, there are things that you can achieve and still be in a position and still be empowered. And I think that's more of the message. It's not more about becoming a female leader. It's, are you empowered in your role and are you in control in your role and can you make an impact? And I think that's a good message that, as the Rothman executive, female executive leadership, like if we can be part of that, I think that would be a great opportunity for all of us to help break that wall.
Awesome. Thank you, Chelsey. Anyone else?
Yeah, no, I agree, Chelsey. I think this was really good. This was a great opportunity, I think, for us to be able to just kind of sit and chat just about varying topics and things that have crossed all of our paths and, how we've either worked through those things or to be able to openly speak about challenges and things that we've had to overcome and then how we kind of arrived to where we are today. It's great that we're in an organization that actually is highlighting these types of things so that it can be shared with others within the organization. So it's just been great to be a part of the company for as long as I have. And it's been great to actually see us get to a point where I can actually share a space with other women who are in these types of roles. It's a long time coming, but it's so great to see it and be a part of it.
And I would just say that to your point, Nicole, like it's great to see that for someone, because I've gotten to know you over the past couple of years and I don't think you would stay in an organization just for the sake of it. So hearing that you've been here for as long as you have and seeing where you are, like, I feel like it's like a little bit like comforting knowing and I'm like, okay, something must be going on right here.
I'm actually only 25. I had my kid at 1.
Absolutely. Yes, you did.
Very young, my face.
Listen, we thought you were under 40, remember?
I know. It's so great. I love you guys. Really not.
I was like, let's do this. I wouldn't question if you did it. Betsy, anything else before we go?
I would just say believe in yourself. The rest of it will fall into place.
Simple. Love it. Straight to the point. Again, I want to thank the 3 of you for joining me today. It was honestly, like I said, it was a great conversation. I learned so much. So I'm hoping that when people hear this episode that, it's something that they can kind of play throughout the year. It's obviously, like I said, it's timely because it's Women's History Month and International Women's Day was, the week before. But again, this is a conversation that is just ongoing. And again, I'm hoping someone just gets a little something from it and, and they hear it and they share it. So thank you all again.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for having us.
I'd like to thank Betsy, Chelsey, and Nicole for joining me today. Please visit our landing page, rothmanortho.com/podcast for all available episodes. We're on Spotify, Apple, Google, and a few other listening platforms. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share on whatever platform you utilize. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, take care.